Welcome to the Sip and Say It podcast with your host, Carlos, a.k.a. Los, a podcast that promises to deliver a raw and unfiltered experience as we dive into the one-on-one conversations about a wide array of topics. We're inviting listeners to engage in candid discussions, personal stories, and diverse perspectives. Say what's on your minds. Let's create an open space for honest dialogue. As a village, let's immerse ourselves on trending issues, personal anecdotes, thought-provoking themes. Nothing is off limits. Tune in and become part of the conversations. Let's sip and say it together.
What's up, folks? How you doing? Welcome to another episode of Sip and Say It. So yeah, welcome to Sip and Say It. I'm here with our boy Kev. Kev,
Welcome, everybody. It's Kevin here.
there you go. So folks, listen, we're by popular demand, based on an episode that we just launched out, which was Balancing Love and Ambition. We received numerous emails. And what was interesting enough that most of the requests was on that episode, we should have a woman's perspective into this conversation. Obviously,
You're not kidding.
say again.
You're not kidding. So many emails came in about that.
Yeah. So I mean, listen, we asked for it, we got it, and we obliged. And on the line right now, obviously, is two professional females. I like to identify one as Lady X and the other one as Maria at this time. So I'm going to kind of roll it right off to Miss Lady X. Welcome and thank you for jumping on board and being brave and engaging in this conversation. But we both really, Kevin and I really want to get your perspective of what you listen to and share it. And just for the purpose of the podcast, can you guys lower down that radio a little bit for us in the background? There you go. So, Lady X, roll out. Tell me what was your perspective of that?
Well, first, good evening, gentlemen. Thank you for allowing me to be on your podcast. To say that it started off okay, but then as it progressed, it made me angry. Angry.
Okay.
Very angry. I think it hit the point where I forget which one of you said it. It must be hard for the female to come home and from work to cook and clean and take care of the kids. I was just curious as to why that was the first thought in a male's mind, why that would be the woman's role,
So
like
I,
automatically.
I'll jump into that. I mean, full disclosure, that was me. I actually said that, and that was out of sincerity. Most households, we all know it, and I'm sure that you guys wouldn't argue this point that women are the hustlers. They're coming from their job, their career to come home and handle business at home. And I know that is stressful. And you're right, maybe to a certain extent. Maybe it's not always the woman. Maybe there's the man that's coming home and doing that. But traditionally, and Kev, chime in, traditionally, the woman seems to be the one that's always grinding.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. That's the traditional way that it's been. It doesn't have to necessarily be the women in today's society. Yes, there are different types of couples. You've got husbands that stay at home. I heard of I heard the other day of a man who his wife is a surgeon. They got pregnant. They had a child. She makes way more money than he does, so he decided to be the one that stayed at home, and then she's the one that goes out and earns the money for them. So he's the one that stays home and cooks and cleans and raises his son and does the laundry and all that kind of stuff. That is what worked for them. They didn't worry about the traditional norms. They decided they were going to do what worked for them. So yeah, it does
So
not have to be that.
if I can interrupt, let me say this. This day and age, there is no more traditional, because the woman in the relationship, whether you're married or you're living together, has to work in order to survive. So I guess my angerment, or me being upset at the podcast, was, why does the woman have to come home from work to take care of the kids? Why can't you both share the responsibility while still trying to achieve whatever goals you're trying to achieve at work? That was I think the point where I got upset and almost didn't want to listen to the rest of the podcast, because
Well, I mean,
you
you're
both were
fair,
talking about traditional roles, right?
right?
But we're not in traditional times anymore.
Right, but
So
you also are
we're
speaking of a utopia that unfortunately doesn't exist. That's the problem. I agree with you 100% with your view. Yes, it should be a balanced 50-50 thing. If
See, and it
both
doesn't have
partners
to be
work,
50-50. It doesn't have
but
to
I
be
think
50-50.
it doesn't have to, but I
There's
think it's
nothing in life
fair.
that's 50-50. It should be, I give, you give, I give, you give, not who gave the most and who gave the less, or who does more, who does less. For example, in my role, in my household, we both share the same responsibility at work. It's unfortunate, but or fortunately, however you want to see it, we both um, work in the same place. We both share the same job title. So for me, we don't share the same shift. So whoever gets home first should have the responsibility of whatever it is, taking care of the kids, cooking, taking out the trash. It shouldn't be, I don't think in real life there's no 50-50. So you should be able to achieve your goals and your ambitions without having to sacrifice family time, quality time. And again, I don't know which one of you referenced it, making time. So
We
by
both
doing
did.
all that, there was one more that said than the other, but I think at that point is when I got upset at the podcast. And I don't know if it's because I took it personal, but that being said, I don't think there's no such thing as 50-50. The traditional, where the man goes out to work and the woman stays home and takes care of the kids and the house, doesn't really exist anymore, unless you're some type of millionaire and you can afford to have someone stay at home. In reality of it all, we in this generation can't afford to do that. I've been married 25 years and I've never been able to stay home and take care of my children. As soon as I gave birth and they were 6 weeks old, I had to go back to work and hand them off to a babysitter. So
So listen, before we go over to Maria, because I want to get her concept of it. So the purpose of, I think, of this episode was really to discuss um, in detail the difficulty of balancing your career and home, right? So I don't want us to lose the concept of really what the episode is. And here, I always say, at full transparency on my behalf, if we deviated from the actual topic, I mean, that could have probably been the point, as we were going through this, right? You could go through so many different avenues in this specific topic when it comes to balancing home and work life, right? Again, I'm not taking it away from uh, any side of who does the most difficult work, who sacrifices the most. I think ultimately the episode was just trying to find that, how do you balance that out, and what efforts on both sides of the world people should be doing to reconnect with that significant other. Um, and then going a little deeper into how do we deal? Because I don't even think we went down that avenue, that rabbit hole about the career side, how difficult that part is. And you know, you could be this Fortune 500 president of this company, and your significant other is not as successful as you are. Is that intimidating? Is where does that lie at? I mean, that's, again, that is an episode that we could go so many different angles in this. But let me not take up your time, and let me switch over to Diana, Maria, correction. And I'm sorry, I was just reading off of something else. Maria, give me your perspective.
Getting people's names wrong? Joking. I think it all comes down
Welcome.
to.
Welcome.
Well, thank you for having me. I will try to keep it PG as possible. I think it comes down to just communication. So, and same thing, piggybacking off of Lady X, as far as listening to the podcast, it's like, yes, it definitely needs a female perspective. And as far as in balancing life, home life, and work life, I think communication is key for everything. So, I mean, if somebody's super ambitious and they have all these goals for work and all it is work, 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 it's like obviously at home, you sacrifice at home. So I think if you're speaking to your significant other, it needs to be, okay, this is how much I'm going to work. This is how much you're working. Now, what do we do when we get home? Are we shutting off the phones? Right now, I have two phones. One, my work phone and right next to me. And then I'm on this phone. And I'm constantly looking at it, even when I'm home, if I'm out to eat. And I need to be more mindful of, I need to put this away. Work is done. I will deal with this tomorrow. So I
So
think
Maria,
it's,
you're for I guess for the audience to know, you're a business owner.
yes.
Okay. Okay. And I could only imagine, or no, I can't imagine how tasking that could be to balance that out, right? Because I'm sure as the business owner, you got to assure that your business is up and running and producing for your livelihood. Am I right?
Correct. And that's all you're thinking of is business, business, business. I got to make sure everything's okay. Employees are okay. Whatever at work needs to be, is okay. That back end of it, and also taking care of the clients. But then when it's home, it's okay. I got to worry about taking care of home. So it's, like I said, communication with who you're with, as far as, okay, if you're home before me, are you going to start dinner? Are you going to have things ready to go as I'm coming home, or vice versa? If I'm coming home first and you're working, am I going to have everything ready for you when you get here? So the same thing as far as balancing it, but also I think it needs to be communicated ahead of time. So no one's looking at each other getting frustrated and sitting there like, well, I expected you to do this for me. But I think
Right.
it's taking the time.
So that correlates a little bit of some of the things or top points that we were making about scheduling
Mhm.
those opportunities, prioritizing stuff, and the big C word. I think we could all agree is if we don't have communication with each other, then we're not aware, right? Left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. Am I right?
Correct.
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 Lady X, what do you think?
So to piggyback off of Maria, I think the communication starts prior to this situation, whatever it be, a partnership, a marriage, whatever it is, communicating before you guys start the relationship. Like when it starts to get serious and you decide that you're going to go down that marriage route, or we're going to live together and we're going to have these children, you need to decide where you're at in your career, where you want to be in your career, and what those roles and responsibilities are going to look like before you dive into bringing other humans into this world, before you dive into splitting finances. There was a reference to traditionally the men went out to work and the woman stayed home. Again, it goes back to what I said, we work too. So it depends on where the woman is in her career and where the man is it an opportunity for the man to progress more so than the woman? Does she take a back seat and let him go as far as he can and be the supporter? That being said, that should all be discussed before everything is combined, if that makes sense, in my opinion. So sometimes as adults, we just dive into these relationships, we start having kids, we do the marriage thing, and then we get stuck. And everybody's ambitious. They want to be the CEO or the president or a business owner. And they forget that they created this life, and now they don't know how to
Right.
coexist.
So open line of communication has to
But
exist
I
from the
think,
beginning.
correct, it starts before you guys say I do, before you sign, that deed to the mortgage, before you combine bills, before you walk into combined finances and combine lives. It should be discussed. Everything should be discussed, down to how many children you want to have, where you want to be in so many years, what your goals are. Because I think what we're missing is everybody's goals change in time. Where you started at is not where you want to end up at. It could be that I didn't have a career when we first got together, and now as the woman, I have this career and I want to try to make it all the way to the top. Are you going to be supportive if that happens? I
Right.
think
But
people miss that part.
right. But people also go through and as knowledgeable sometimes as we are and try to stay up with the times, right? The logical part that you would say, we would say, um, yeah, let me be transparent. Let them know where I'm at from the beginning and what are my expectations and stuff like that from the get. But let's be, I'm going to say almost something that I think you referenced in a sense. Um, I don't want to say traditionally, right? But people become or get on this love high and, you know, they're so, I can't get the right word, just in love that
They're accommodating.
they forget to say, Here's all my cards. I'm laying all my cards on the table. Let's discuss these things, and I want to make sure you're on the same page. Because if you're not on the same page, then we got to move on. We get so tied into that love potion, that love high, that we're all human. We
You're fallible. We will fail,
yeah, we do.
even though we don't intend to. Where promises are made, discussions are had. But let's be realistic. What we agree to today, and with all our heart agreed to today, may not be something we want to agree to 2 years from now. Situations could have changed. Opportunities at work could have risen. Maybe you got passed over in a promotion because you were more focused or you were worried about your relationship and you didn't work at your career as much. And now you're feeling slighted. So, yeah, it's a tough one. It's a tough situation to be in and to balance ambition and love. Because I think that is like Lady X said, I don't think there's a 50-50 on that. I don't think you can do 50-50 on ambition and love because one is going to take priority at some point versus the other. And I think that's something that shifts over time. There are going to be times when ambition might be 80-20 ambition, but other times it might be 80-20 on love because as we get older and as we reach certain levels in our career, then a lot of times we either gain time to have back with our family or we lose time that we have with our family. And that's kind of why we talked about being intentional on our schedule and always having at least that one set time that is sacred for being with our significant other. And then everything else with open communication can just work out, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, we can't forget to find a way and understand the importance of nurturing the relationship. But I'm gonna slide over to Maria back again for a second. Again, being a business owner, doing what you do, um, I hope you're okay with me asking this. Do you have a significant other? And if not, or if you do, what have you seen as pitfalls or successes or failures?
So no, I do not. And I think it just all comes down to as far as just because I am like a single mother and all I've ever done is just mostly just work and coming home to my child. So that does put a damper on other things. But unfortunately, work has always been not unfortunately, it has been more of a priority and just that thing that's just work, work, work. And that's all I know how to do. I work 6 days a week. So don't take much time for myself. And if I was to get involved into a relationship, that's something that I would have to be mindful of and say, okay, work can't always be the only thing. There has to be compromise. I'm going to have to put the work phone away. I'm going to have to not always answer every email after work hours. So I have to be mindful of that. And I think it's just taking the necessary steps and knowing what I need, addressing it and just actually going ahead with it and doing it, which sometimes that can, it's a process. Sometimes it could be harder, easier said than done. But, yeah, just like I said, I think it's just communicating it and actually taking the steps necessary and actually doing it and following through.
Okay. Did you get to listen to the entire episode?
I listened to most of it. And then after a while, I
Okay.
was like, yeah, female perspective. I get what you were saying. You guys made some good points. But I think it just has to come from both to get a full picture
Okay.
of
Yeah. So, I mean,
balance.
listen, this is you exactly. I think that's the magical word. So, and in future episodes down the line, we'll definitely entertain, topics that um would really demand to have different perspectives, right? Um, what did you guys think about some of the acronyms that we use down the line, like HALT, the 4 T's? Did you guys go that far enough to listen to that portion of the episode?
I didn't hear that part.
Okay, Lady X.
I did.
Okay.
Did you get
It,
angry again?
uh, well,
I'm sorry.
yes, because that's not being a wife of 25 years. That's not real life. As though we like to utilize that tool when that real life folks who have career, kids, real life things happening, they don't have time to worry about that. So for myself, I can only speak for this relationship I've been in 25 years. I've taken a back seat to the husband's career. I let him. We work in the same place, so I let him try to progress and see how far he can get before I put my foot in there and try to get as far as I can get. But I did that out of just because I'm a mom and my children came first. They right now they're all older. They were younger back then. We're talking. I've been at the same place for 14 years. He's been there 22. So it's a little bit different scenario. So I did take a back seat. I allowed him to try to progress and see how far he can get. And when he got as far as he can go, then it was my turn. Um, Fortunately for me, um, I always put my children first before the job because I always felt that I was a mom first. So I allowed him to do whatever he needed to do for work, but I never take work home with me. I try not to. I have a work phone as well. I learned a long time ago that that phone turns off when I get here, and I don't turn it back on till approximately 8 hours before I got to go back to work just to catch up, so I'm not walking in blind on my Monday. But my children always came first. Now they're all grown, and I'm looking to do other things. I can
So,
say that. Go
go ahead.
ahead.
I'm sorry. No, no.
No, go
Go ahead.
ahead. Ask your question.
So no. What I wanted to do is kind of recap. Again, because maybe whether you listened to it all the way through or Maria didn't get to listen to it, but I wanted to recap, and I'm gonna let uh, Kev basically recap. Halt. I'm gonna recap the 4 T's of communication. Now let's speak about whether that's realistic or not, right? So again, that was I think that was Emily Morse that
Hmm.
came up with. She's a therapist, and her 4 T's, which is timing, tone, technique, and truth. All right. So I think in any battle, well, let's not say battle, in any discussion, the right time for it is something that we have to consider. Yes or no?
Good rock.
Yes and no.
Mm. Okay. Well, give me your perspective of that.
Me or Kevin?
You.
You talk in real life? I would like to say in real life that you would practice. I tried to research some of the things that you both referenced, but I found that that's not real life. Because in real life, you would like to stop and think about, is this the right time to say it? Is this the right time to have this discussion? Um, that's not real life.
Okay. Well,
And
let
I
me
feel
ask you
like,
this:
go
if you're
ahead.
in the middle of a family event and something occurs, is that the right moment to address it in front of the family? And is that the right timing for that?
It depends on who you are. For me, the answer would be absolutely not. I don't do public displays of
Right.
anger or
Right.
that kind of thing, but that's only for me. There's
So,
some that do that, that at that moment, that's what they're feeling and that's what's going to happen.
right.
That's why I say it's not real life. I would like to
But,
think that, yeah, you would stop and do those 3 T's, the timing, all that good stuff. But in reality, does that really happen? This is why couples find that love and ambition and moving forward and trying to, balance life and career, find it so hard because nobody's reading these books that you guys are referencing. And I guess you asked me why it made me angry. That right there, because that's not real life. I would like to
well,
say, go ahead.
logically, I'm going to agree with you. That's not real life, right? But if you're a progressive person to try to think of, all right, I can't be in battle all the time. I can't be in battle mode all the time. I have to discuss certain things.
Mhm.
And you're logical about it, right? Because you want things to work. Then you have to take these things into account. And all we're doing is referencing what Emily Morse, again, she's a therapist when it comes to relationships. And just think of it. If you and your significant other had to go to um, therapy, this would be something that would be presented to you guys. And obviously broken down in much more medical terms and you know, timing, I think, to me is key. I could only reflect back to me and back in the day, and I think I used to fly off the handle, and it didn't matter. I was one of those people that wherever it happened, I wanted to address it right there and then. In time, you become much more wiser, and you say to yourself, "It's not the place for it." You know, and when I say place, it wasn't the right timing for it. You'd also get to learn. I learned anyway, the hard way, that if I'm about to engage in the conversation, tone meant a lot. If I come out like a heavyweight champion, swinging, throwing bolos at the end of the day, screaming to the top of my lungs, am I getting anywhere? Either you answer, Maria, Lady X, am I getting anywhere if I'm coming yelling out of the top of my lungs?
Oh, I mean, tone is a big thing. And I know some people have an issue with tone, and obviously you're going to get defensive, and a wall is going to go up if someone perceives your tone to be a certain way. So I think
Right.
that's also something that would have to be addressed. Because me, I speak monotone. I'll just give you a real world example. There's plenty of times I've worked that I've spoken to people just like regular, like this, and they're like, "Oh, what's wrong with Diana?" And I'm like, "Nothing. This is how I talk. That's just my regular tone of voice." And some people have more inflection. Some people get really excited and their voice goes up and down. And I'm more of a just even keel. And people perceive as an attitude or what's wrong with me or am I having a bad day? And I'm like, no, I'm just chilling. What's wrong with you? So I think too, that's also communication. And I would tell people that if I'm just having a normal conversation, this is how I normally speak. So please don't take it as an offense, or if I'm having a bad day, I'll let you know. So it was also letting people know this is how I normally speak, and
Right.
not to take it any type of way. So once again, communication. Communication is key for everything. It's just
Right.
that people want to
I,
actually do it and go through with it.
right. And so the follow behind number two being tone, right? It is what, excuse me, what is the tone in my voice? What is the tone of my body language? Because can we agree that that speaks volumes right there? Because if you're that, you're a person that speaks with your hands or shaking your head or wailing all over the place, a normal person is not gonna, that's unacceptable. You got to get yourself together. Am I right?
Correct.
100%.
All right. So the tone of your body language is another one. Then the other part of this, again, I'm only repeating what Emily Morse has out there, is the tone of your heart. If you're going in there with the mindset of just trying to defend yourself, then your heart's not in the right place. I guess your heart needs to be in a place. Let me get this to a civil situation where we could both understand each other and accomplish the mission, and is to get into a better place. Then what's the overall tone of your relationship? Then she finishes off by saying, what is the overall tone of the environment that we're in at the moment? I think all those things kind of, you know, can either escalate or de-escalate a situation.
100%. That's why I reduced my 4 T's to 3 T's, just timing, tone, and turf. Because where you choose to have that discussion also controls the tone of the discussion.
Yeah. So talk to us about Halt. I know you laid it out for us. And again, whether Maria and Lady X didn't dive too in or they got annoyed and didn't want to follow through with it. But kind of give us a recap.
Sure. So in our lines of work, we come across a lot of acronyms, and they help us to remember things and to put things into action because of that. And HALT is one that I really like, which is hunger, anger, loneliness, and tired. So when you are about to have a discussion of some sort, or someone's going to have a discussion with you, it's a quick assessment that you need to make. Are you hungry? Are you angry currently? Are you feeling lonely, or are you tired? Because that puts you in a particular state of mind. If you're hungry or hangry, like we like to say, then you really can't focus on what's being said. Or if you're the one that needs to say something, you're going to be probably abrupt and quick because you want to get done with it so you can go eat something. And you're really not going to pay attention to what the other person's giving off because you just want to make your point and get out. If you're angry, again, you're angry. So you're going to be defensive. If anybody says anything to you, you're going to be defensive. And if it's your turn to talk, you're going to be offensive. You don't care what the other person has to say at all. You just want to you want to get your point across, or you're going to put walls up and defend yourself because they don't know what they're talking about. If you're feeling lonely, then you feel like it doesn't even matter. What I have to say doesn't matter because you don't care. No one cares. No one cares what happens to me. You got that feeling of loneliness and ineptitude. And if you're tired, well, again, you're tired. You just are not in the state of mind to listen. And you're going to also want to get through with discussions quickly. You're not going to take your time and express what needs to be said in the correct tone. So that's why it's a quick assessment. And if you do HALT, I know it sounds like a lot. And I know using the word realistic, that maybe it's not always realistic in real life, but it's a quick thing to do. And I think it helps with personal conflicts with other people if we can put that into practice.
So I'm kind of interested on Lady X because I kind of got the tone from her that that's not realistic. So I'm not going to put words on her mouth. I just want to hear what she had to say about that.
So, perfect world, we like to use that acronym, right? The job I currently hold has a lot of those acronyms we use in our work relationships that you would use in your personal relationships. But again, that's not real life. So me being older and being in a long-term relationship as long as I have, I can use those now. Now, I could say, now's not a good time to talk. Either I'm hungry, I'm tired, he's hungry. It's just not a good time to talk because A, the audience that's in the house, the kids are home, whatever the case is. However, when young folks are starting out, and I say young folk, I mean, this is a new relationship and you're starting out. Is that the reality of the situation? You're talking about when folks get to the point where they need therapy. And not everybody admits to needing therapy, and a lot of couples won't go to therapy. I personally like to try to stop and think before I say things because I'm by nature a hothead. I am. I say what I mean what I say, and it doesn't matter how it comes out, it's going to come out exactly how I'm feeling. So I've learned in my somewhat years of life, I'm going to tell you how old I am, to stop and think before I speak. At least I try. And when you're in a relationship and, love conquers all, everybody's like in love in this case, and they're not worried about that stuff. They're angry at the moment, whatever's making them mad at the moment, and that's how they're going to speak. I think that's where a lot of relationships go left. This is why I revert back to what I said before, is that these conversations and this counseling that you both are speaking of probably should happen prior to you entering into a fully committed relationship. By that I mean not just dating and you both going home to your separate houses, apartments, whatever you live in, when you decide to commingle and coexist, live together, get married, have children, whatever the case is. Though I feel like this day and age and everything that I've learned in my 25 years of being married, these conversations need to happen prior to that. That's my opinion. Because if you're talking about...
But is that
Go ahead.
realistic?
Yes and no. So I've been, in my situation, no, it's not realistic because it didn't happen in the traditional sense, right? I had the kids and the 2.5 kids, the house and the career prior to us even saying I do and walking down the aisle. So should we have had these conversations and these counselings prior to? Absolutely, 100%. At this stage in my life, I agree. If I could counsel my children who are heading towards that stage in their life, I would say seek counseling now. Do the exercises now so that you know where you're going to be 10 years. You can kind of get a roadmap of where you might be 10 years from now. Because I've had, I know a couple couples who've done not these exact, exercises you and Kev are talking about, but have gone through counseling to see where they want to be and what their roles and responsibilities are going to be prior to them committing to themselves for the rest of their life, whether that's getting married or living together, whatever the case is. I think that if these conversations happen prior to you committing 100%, relationships will last a lot longer. I don't know if you look at the statistics. I think the last thing I read, and I don't quote me on this, was like marriage is like divorce is like a 70% or 80% rate now in the country. Like, that's crazy to me. What's the point in getting married? What's the point in being in a committed relationship if you guys can't have these discussions? And I think if these things that you both are talking about, these these books and these counseling sessions should happen prior. And I know I'm related to a couple of couples who've had them, and they are in a loving, committed, and absolutely 100%. They communicate. I'm not saying they don't have their bad days, but you can actually see where they communicate and how they gel well together. I think that if I had done this years ago, things would be different now today. Maybe for the
Well,
both of you as well.
I get it, and I understand where you're coming from, but that this kind of throws a little twist for me. So I'm going to pitch this back over to Maria real quick. And listening to to that episode, being involved in this conversation, what does that do for you? Business owner, mother, you have your household. When it comes down to possibly entertaining a relationship, like, does this scare you? Does this encourage you? Will you seek out um, certain aspects to discuss before you even engage to say, okay, let's give this a try? Give me your view.
Well, first I would have to make myself available. That's my one thing. Because like I said, everything's been work, but now that my child is grown and about to leave, I'm going to be an empty nester. And just listening to everyone's perspective and seeing what I've seen around me, I definitely think it's, like I said, communication is what's going to have to happen. And this is, if you have, I'm a small business owner. I work this many days. Is that going to be an issue? If it's going to be an issue, I'm going to have to decide if I'm going to cut back or if I'm going to find a compromise to make it work. And it goes to the same thing if I'm involved with somebody else. But or
So
also
you're agreeing that those conversations have to happen for you, have to happen
100%.
before you. Okay.
Right. When you're in that dating process or whatever, and then first finding out about the person and their views and their morals or just how they see things in life, and just to see where you guys are at that point. And I would have to ask those questions and then also make the decision if I want a relationship that's, I'm not constantly focused on work, I'm going to have to make some changes. And if I'm okay with those changes, and same thing for whoever, significant other, are they willing to make those changes, or am I willing just to be supportive, and vice versa? So all that needs, yes, those conversations need to be said and had before anything continues further. And that can go for anything. How you're going to raise your kids if you want kids, or how you're going to, divvy up the household. All that should definitely be, spoken about prior.
You've got a gray head on your shoulder.
I try.
I mean, there's no question that I think some of us that are starting off, and some of us that have been in relationships, I think we all take a little something out of these conversations at the end of the day. And listen, having that perspective from both sides of the world means a lot. And I think I want to thank both of you guys for jumping on board and being brave enough to send those emails and wanting to jump on board. That we're a new podcast. The objective is to have these conversations sometimes that are uncomfortable. Some of them could be challenging. Um, some of them can just be, let's have a great time and talk about it and see where this leads us. I don't think this is the last episode for for this, balancing love and
Ambition,
ambition.
yeah.
Again, I think that first episode allows us to go so many, many, many different routes and things that we haven't even touched on at this point.
Right. And Lady X said something that, she said it's kind of not realistic. I mean, now because we're older and we've learned these things, that when you're younger, it isn't realistic. But the hope is that with podcasts like this and other things that are out there, that the younger generation does learn from the older generation and does not follow in our footsteps in the mistakes that we make. That's kind of one of the reasons we put this out there is yeah, we're older and wiser, but we do want the younger generation to learn from our mistakes or to learn from our experience.
No, I listen. The key is to always remember that you got to find balance in that journey that you take with that person. Um, Life's going to give you all kind of curveballs at the end of the day. It's just how you handle it, right? It's how you handle it. Um, the reality is that we will see some struggles. We will experience some stuff because some of us, our ambitions are at 100 when some other people at 50. There's some of us that educate ourselves to try to get to that next level of things, and those opportunities present ourselves because we decided to educate ourselves and go. Again, it's not to say that you can't partake in life with a significant other or try to build something with someone. It's just understanding that, as I think all of us were talking about, as long as we communicate with each other, you'll be able to establish both your career and the relationship that you choose to take with that person. Right. So, I'm not going to drag this on any longer, but Lady X, close it up for us. Any input, advice moving forward? And I'm sure there's going to be more episodes on this. Could be a part 3 to this on something else. We're going to research a little bit of some of these emails that we got to probably bring some other people in it, but we want to hear from you, and then eventually Maria. Wrap it up for us and give us a little bit more insight to close it up.
First, thank you guys for having me on. That's one. Two, as an older person, I'd like to say to the younger generation, have those conversations prior to getting into these serious relationships, marriages, living together, children, whatever the case is. Have those counseling sessions first before you decide to move on, because you'd eliminate a lot of problems moving forward and learn tools to communicate that a lot of us learn later on in life. That's kind of all I got to say.
Yeah, pay attention to those red flags, right? I mean, a lot of us at the end of the day don't, because we're not that high of love and what would we call it? Is it with the honeymoon?
Honeymoon, yeah.
A
The honeymoon phase.
Yeah, the
yes.
honeymoon phase. We fail ourselves. So, Maria, wrap it up on your side. Give me a little bit of insight.
I think just what I was saying before, everything is communication. It's the only way you're going to understand your significant other. It's the only way you're going to grow. If you agree to disagree, if you're going to find a plan to make it better, or if you're just going to understand your spouse and just support them. And that's all you can do. So I think it's just communicating and also respecting your significant other enough to do what's necessary to find that balance and find that alone time and, and your ambition for work and for them to be supportive. So it's just communicating, having respect for each other. And even if people don't do the counseling ahead of time, or things start to fall to the wayside in the middle of the relationship, or as years go by, I think it's just still taking that time to try to reconnect and try to figure it out and not have the egos come in and actually try to sit down and have an open, honest dialogue. And that's all I think.
Yeah, I
Thank
agree.
you for having me.
No, absolutely, and thank you for reaching out and thank you for accepting. I'm going to call that courageous out of both of you to to be willing to accept our invites to get on and have that discussion. It's absolutely a challenge navigating through life and what life gives us and or what we put ourselves through, right? We just got to keep striving for that balance, and just remember that, love and ambition can absolutely coexist. It's just a matter of, like you said, the big C, communicating. So folks, I'm going to close up part 2 of, balancing love and ambition. I want to thank the ladies for getting on. Thanks, Kev, for getting on and enlighten us and give us a recap of HALT. We had a little bit of recap of the 4 T's. But, you guys out there, please continue to follow us. Please continue to send emails out. That's going to be sipandsayitpodcast@gmail.com. Kev, what's the other one?
info@sipandsayit.com. And we're currently working on some ideas for future episodes. And I like to say that if you or someone you know has some type of fear, we'd like to hear from it. Make sure you reach out to us at info@sipandsayit.com.
Yeah, absolutely, folks. And like I closed the last one, and I'll close every episode, we're trying to have real talk one sip at a time. Good night, and see you on the next one. Thank you, folks.
On behalf of your host, Los, thank you for joining us this week on Sip and Say It. Without you, the village, and the participation on Sip and Say It, the universe will never know what's on your mind. Subscribe to Sip and Say It on media platforms like Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Music, YouTube, iHeartRadio, Pocket Cast, and our very own Facebook page at Sip and Say It. Email us with your thoughts about the episode or topics you'd like to hear to be discussed at sipandsayitpodcast@gmail.com. Tune in next for our next episode. We can sip and say it together.